Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, July 29, 2025. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the United Kingdom will recognize a Palestinian state if Israel does not agree to a ceasefire with Hamas, improve what he calls the appalling situation in Gaza, and commit to a two-state solution. President Donald Trump says the U.S. will not follow suit and that recognizing a Palestinian state rewards Hamas, which he says he's not about to do. On the Jeffrey Epstein case, President Trump says one of the underage girls that Epstein hired away from a spa at Mar-a-Lago later accused Epstein of raping and sex trafficking her. Senate Republican leaders suggest Senate rules may need to be changed if Democrats do not agree to speed up confirmation of the president's nominees. Commerce Committee Chair Sen Ted Cruz and Transportation Secretary Duffy unveil an aviation safety bill 6 months after the deadly midair collision of a plane and helicopter near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. warns about the risks of 7-OH, which can produce opioid-like effects. It's sold in energy drinks and gummies at convenience stores. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer talks about the mass shooting Monday night in New York City that killed 4, including an off-duty police officer. Plus, President Trump celebrates the opening of a new Trump-branded golf course in Scotland. And former President Barack Obama remembers the late Baseball Hall of Famer Ryne Sandberg as a class act. From the Associated Press, the United Kingdom will recognize a Palestinian state in September unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire in Gaza, allows the UN to bring in aid, and takes other steps towards long-term peace, Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Tuesday. Starmer, who is under mounting domestic pressure over the issue as scenes of hunger in Gaza horrify many Britons, convened a rare summertime cabinet meeting to discuss the situation in Gaza. It came after he discussed the crisis with President Donald Trump during a meeting in Scotland on Monday. That was from Associated Press. Prime Minister Starmer spoke in a televised address to his nation.
Our goal remains a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable and sovereign Palestinian state. But right now, that goal is under pressure like never before. I've always said that we will recognize a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution. With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank. Meanwhile, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all of the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza. And we'll make an assessment in September on how far the parties have met these steps. But no one should have a veto over our decision. So this is the way forward. We will keep working with all our international partners to end the suffering, get aid flooding into Gaza, and deliver a more stable future for the Middle East. Because I know that is what the British people desperately want to see.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, head of the Labour Party, in a televised address. Israel's foreign ministry writing on X, the shift in the British government's position at this time following the French move and internal political pressures constitutes a reward for Hamas and harms efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza and a framework for the release of hostages. President Donald Trump answered reporters' questions on this on Air Force One as he flew back to Washington from Scotland.
we ask about that, please? On Gaza, Sir Keir Starmer has just announced the UK will recognise Palestinian sovereignty in September if Israel does not commit to a ceasefire, ease the suffering in Gaza, and commit to a long-term solution that would deliver the two-state solution in the Middle East. Did you know that was coming? What is your response?
We never discussed it, surprisingly. It was never really discussed. Maybe a little bit at the news conference, but he was sort of discussing it with you. We never did discuss it, and we have no view on that. We're going to get a lot of money to the area so they can get some food. He's going to also. I think the European Union is going to put up money too for food, and hopefully it's going to be properly distributed, and it will be. I think it will be. We have some pretty good response on people for the distribution of the food.
Mr. President.
We want to take it one thing at a time. They need food, and they need people to be able to get them the food.
But to follow up on that, I mean, is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution, or at least
you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that you're rewarding Hamas if you do that, and I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are in, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas, and I'm not about to do that.
Mr. President, you mentioned setting up food centers. When can we expect to see
Very
those
soon.
food centers?
Yeah, very soon. So we said $60 million. That's a lot of money for food, a lot of money. That can take care of people for a long time. And we want to make sure it's being spent properly. And part of the spending is the distribution. If you know, a lot of money's been sent by other countries, but nothing compared to us. But a lot of things have been stolen. They send money, they send food, and Hamas steals it. So it's a tricky little game. But we're going to make sure we have some very good people. They're going to be watching it.
Who is going to be running those food centers for you, and what kind of oversight
Well,
can we
we're going to be
expect?
dealing with Israel, and we think they can do a good job of it. And they want to do it.
Of monitoring the food centers?
No, they want to do it. The food centers, yeah. They want to preside over the food centers to make sure the distribution is proper.
President Donald Trump speaking to reporters on Air Force One as he flew back from Scotland to Washington, D.C., reacting to the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's announcement that his country will recognize a Palestinian state in September if Israel does not meet certain conditions regarding the war in Gaza. French President Emmanuel Macron said recently that France will be recognizing a Palestinian state when the United Nations meets in September. Only a United Nations Security Council vote can admit a new member state with voting power in the General Assembly, and the U.S. could exercise its veto power as one of the 5 permanent Security Council members to block that. President Trump today was also a little bit more precise about how much he is shortening his original 50-day deadline for Russia to reach a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine or face secondary sanctions from the U.S., that is, sanctions on countries that trade with Russia. On Monday, he said 10 to 12 days. Today, he said 10 days starting from today, which would be August 8th.
Mr. President, yesterday you mentioned that you would change the Russia deadline to 10 to 12 days. Has that started yet, or when can we, see the official statement that is the new deadline?
I'll tell you what, I'll give it to you now. Do you want a big scoop?
Yes, please.
Everybody else, close your ears, okay? You ready?
I'm ready.
10 days from today.
Got it.
Okay?
Got it.
Good.
have you communicated?
We have a scoop. And then, we're going to put on tariffs and stuff, and I don't know if it's going to affect Russia, because he wants to obviously probably keep the war going. But we're going to put on tariffs and the various things that you put on. It may or may not affect them, but it could.
President Donald Trump holding a news conference on Air Force One. A story from the New York Times. Dmitry S. Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, told reporters on Tuesday that he would like to avoid making any assessments about Mr. Trump's remarks. He said, "We took note of President Trump's statement yesterday. The special military operation is ongoing, and we remain committed to the peace process to resolve the conflict around Ukraine and ensure our interest in the course of this settlement." The special military operation is the Kremlin's chosen term for Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, now in its 4th year. That was all from the New York Times article. Another issue raised in the Air Force One news conference was about the late Jeffrey Epstein. As a Forbes article puts it, President Donald Trump said Tuesday Jeffrey Epstein stole one of his workers, who then became one of Epstein's most high-profile accusers, from Mar-a-Lago, and alleged people were taken out of the spa to work for Epstein, elaborating on claims Trump made for the first time Monday when he cut ties with Epstein because he was poaching his employees. That was from the Forbes article. Here again is the news conference on Air Force One.
Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. But just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them young women? Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young women?
What did they do? In the spa.
In the spa?
Yeah, people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yep. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
President Donald Trump, part of his news conference on Air Force One as he was flying from Scotland to Washington, D.C. Virginia Giuffre accused Jeffrey Epstein and his former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, of sexually trafficking her when she was a teenager. Virginia Giuffre committed suicide this past April at age 41. Story from NBC News. The House Oversight Committee on Tuesday declined a request from Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers to grant her immunity in exchange for providing testimony to Congress. Maxwell's lawyers said in a letter on Tuesday that Maxwell would be willing to testify before Congress if she received formal immunity alongside other requests. The committee subpoenaed Maxwell last week for a deposition from prison to take place on August 11th. That was from NBC News. The U.S. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, has been among the many Democrats in Congress calling for the release of the government files in the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. Today, Senator Schumer also called for an assessment of the national security implications of those files.
Trump promised he'd release the Epstein files while he was on the campaign trail, yet he has yet to do it. Speaker Johnson quite literally preferred to shut down Congress, sending everyone home on an Epstein recess to avoid the topic. Americans are right to be angry over the lack of transparency, but there are also some very real questions about risks to national security. Given Trump's total about-face on releasing files and given what we know from the FBI whistleblowers, it's natural to ask, what happens if our adversaries use cyber attacks and other means to access files and materials into Epstein that are damaging or worse for President Trump and or those around him? What happens if the Epstein files end up in the hands of Russia or North Korea or Chinese governments? Unless the Epstein files are fully released to the public, could our adversaries use that use that information to blackmail someone like the president? And what kind of risk would that be for our national security? So today, I called on the FBI to immediately conduct a counterintelligence threat to ensure we understand the risk posed if a foreign adversary were to gain access to anything connected with the files, to determine three things: if foreign intelligence agencies could gain access to the files, second, for the FBI to identify any vulnerabilities that could be exploited by foreign intelligence agents, and third, for the FBI to show publicly they're developing mitigation strategies so this couldn't happen. Last Thursday, DHS and HHS were among several government agencies hacked as part of a breach to Microsoft's SharePoint system. This was confirmed that it was Chinese actors, so we don't need this happening again. We have to ensure that it can't happen. National security is not and should never be a partisan issue. We need to do everything we can to make sure we're protecting the U.S. and American families. This report is vital in doing that. Beyond that, there is one more thing Donald Trump could do to quell people's anger, confusion, frustration, and our deep fears. That is, release the files.
The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, at a news conference with other Senate Democratic leaders after the weekly party lunches. Story from Politico. Senator Ruben Gallego, Democrat from Arizona, says his colleagues are discussing strategy for forcing an amendment vote on releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files, as lawmakers are set to begin consideration of government funding bills on the floor in the next few days. Gallego has twice attempted to advance a resolution that would formally demand the release of the documents. The effort was blocked most recently by Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, Republican from Oklahoma, last Thursday. That was from Politico. Another Political article, top Senate Republicans are warning Democrats that unless they start helping to speed up confirmations of President Donald Trump's nominees, there will be consequences, including a potential effort to change the chamber's rules. The warning shot comes as Republicans seek to confirm dozens of Trump nominees before leaving for their traditional summer break. Doing so without weeks of delay would require Democrats to cut a deal to speed up the process, and internal frustration is mounting about the overall pace of confirmations. Again, reporting from Politico, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, spoke about this at a news conference with Senate Republican leaders after the weekly party lunches.
As of this date, back in 2021, Joe Biden had gotten 46 nominees confirmed either by voice vote or unanimous consent. Donald Trump has zero, not a single one confirmed by voice or unanimous consent. And further, the Democrats are making it hard even on bipartisan nominees that sometimes will get 60 votes plus on the floor, one even up to 83 votes on the floor. So even the bipartisan noms are being blocked and delayed, so much so that the Democrats have been forcing me, when I file cloture just to get a nominee considered on the floor, to go in and out of executive and legislative session. So these are just dilatory tactics designed to block and obstruct the president and his agenda. And the sad reality is that there are a lot of these people who fill important positions in our government who need to be able to be confirmed to get there so they can do their jobs. And that's the way of the American people. That's what they voted for. They voted for this president, and he has not had an opportunity to get the people that he wants to have man his administration get there to do their job. So this has got to stop, and clearly the Democrats are starting something and creating a precedent that is going to come back to haunt them. This is really bad. This is a bad practice on their part, because as you all know, what goes around comes around here. And I think, regrettably for the Democrats, they're going to rue the day if they keep this practice up. So I am hoping that they will work with us, come to their senses in the next few days here to try and put together a package of nominees. There are a whole bunch of bipartisan nominees that are out there that are available for consideration right now. But this simply is, again, I've said it before, but it is. It's Trump derangement syndrome on steroids with the Senate Democrats. There are Senate Democrats who actually do want to work on getting some noms through the process, but their leadership is blocking that. And unfortunately, here in the Senate, at least on the Democrat side of the aisle, it is the tail wagging the dog. It is the far left of their caucus that is preventing even good government people who are bipartisan, from getting confirmed. So that's got to change, and if it doesn't, we're going to be here a while.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, at a news conference. Today's nomination votes included confirming William Kimmett as Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade. That vote was 51 to 47. And a procedural vote to advance Dr. Susan Menares as Director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. 52 to 47. A confirmation vote on Dr. Menares set for tonight, as is a confirmation vote on Emil Bove to be a federal appeals court judge. CNBC writes that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick insisted Tuesday that President Donald Trump's upcoming Friday deadline to impose major tariffs on a slew of trading partners won't be delayed any further. But trade negotiations with China, the latest round of which are currently taking place in Stockholm, Sweden, are progressing on a separate timeline. Lutnick noted on CNBC's Squawk Box. Reporting from CNBC, Here is the Commerce Secretary.
He's tired of all those years where it was unfair and asymmetric against us. He wants to right the wrong of the last 80 years of trade policy, and he wants to do it now, and that's what he's doing. So are there deals on the table for him to consider? Yes, but he knows that he can just set the rate and set the price and move on, and he said that over and over again. We put in front of him the deal. He sees the deal, and he decides, do I want to do a deal with India or I don't? And that is up to him. We've done our job. They've made offers, but these countries came to the table slowly from what President Trump was hoping for. But, of course, from their perspective, no one's moved as fast as the world has moved with respect to Donald Trump. He has moved the world in a way that no one can imagine. He's done this in 6 months. This is amazing, and I am, as you can tell, I'm having the best time working for Donald Trump.
We're out of time, but so you think it's more